Welcome back to WaterparkRanger's Let's Play Pikmin 2. Last episode, we found the Purple Pikmin, and they've helped us to get a map that's opened up a new area, the Awakening Wood. And so we're going to check that area out today, and hopefully find some new interesting things in that area. Now, the Valley of Repose is based off winter, obviously, because of all the snow, and Awakening Wood is supposed to represent spring, and it is just a gorgeous area, isn't it? There's all these, like, cherry blossoms in the air, fluttering in the breeze. It's really a nice effect. And Olimar's spider senses are tingling yet again. Good morning. It should please you to know the Purple Pikmin are lodged safely in my hole. Yeah, that is good to know. I forgot to mention it. The confines of my interior seem to suit them perfectly, but they do occasionally tickle me. Stand in the ring of light below me and press A to call the Purple Pikmin out. So let's do that. And he didn't use the word protocol once. Good job, Research Pod. You're becoming more like us. And we're gonna have Louis direct the squad, just so he gets more experience with his toy whistle. His whistle sounds like a toy, while Olimar's is the one that sounds normal to me. Normal as in that's the same whistle from the first Pikmin game. Yep, each captain has a different whistle, which is pretty cool. And those enemies that came out of the ground right there are female shear grubs. Although if you remember from the first Pikmin game, I always just referred to them as termite grubs, or like larvae, because they haven't developed any pincers, so they can't even hurt your Pikmin. And they spawn regularly near your ship in this area. Of course, they're not a threat at all, but they're nice for, I think, either 1 or 2 sprouts apiece. So we might as well bring them back in. And yeah, it looks like they're about 2 sprouts each. Of course, there's also lots of pellet posies that grow here, and it makes sense that they grow well here, because it's spring and all the flowers are supposed to be coming up right about now. I think this is also one of those areas where you get that better sense of Japanese influence, because the cherry blossoms are, you know, that's a very Japanese kind of thing to have. You typically don't get those in around where I live anyway, in the US. And they're a really, really cool looking tree. And like most of the game, it could really take place anywhere, but here this area seems to be a bit more like it could probably take place in Japan. Although there are other places where cherry blossoms grow, obviously. It's just that's more what they're known for. And anyway, we are actually getting a pretty good population going here. And it'll easily be enough to take out another one of those red bulb orbs. These are a lot less common, actually, in Pikmin 2 than in Pikmin 1. And they're actually weaker in this game than the first as well. Actually, just about every enemy that appeared in the first that also appears in this game is significantly weaker. I can hardly think of one that actually gets stronger. Maybe one. Maybe the spotty bull bears actually do get a little bit stronger in one respect in this game. Or rather, 2. Not sure if they have as much HP as they did in the first, because I know that on Pikipedia you can actually check the HP of every single enemy there. They have it listed for Pikmin 2. For every enemy that appears in Pikmin 2, they have the HP listed. But in 1, they haven't found the HP out yet, so maybe it's a little bit less precise. Oh, we're getting that little cutscene. I was wondering exactly what was pausing. I kind of worry every time the game just pauses. I'm like, no, did it freeze up? Olimar, we have a problem. The onion has ceased ejecting seeds. Is it malfunctioning? No, you Pikmin noob. Interesting, it now seems the number of life forms within the onion has increased. Didn't you know that no more than 100 Pikmin will venture onto the planet at once? But currently, I only observed 95 on the surface. Could there be wild Pikmin somewhere? Yeah, so basically what he's saying is normally, although you're only allowed to have 100 Pikmin out, it seems like there's only 95 out, and that's the current limit. The truth is, there are 5 more Pikmin somewhere in this area that are out in the field somewhere. Wild Pikmin, like the ship said. And who knows if we'll ever meet them. And over here, we just got a very wonderful-looking treasure, a strawberry known as a Sunseed berry, which has put us to 10% debt completion. Every time you get 1,000 Pokos or more, that little message will come up. Although if you somehow manage to get like a huge amount at once and then return to the surface, like after you've come out of a dungeon maybe with clearing 20% of the debt, it'll only give you the next 10% message up. So yeah, it'll skip to whatever current percent you're at, which is actually a pretty nicely programmed system. Now that I'm taking a computer programming class, basically, I'm starting to appreciate more some of the nuances of this trade. Anyway, over here we have an iridescent flint beetle. These things are not as frequent as they were in the first game, like the the red bulb orb. Yeah, they used to be called spotty bulbs in Pikmin 1, but there are more bulbs in this game, so now they're called red bulbs. And as you can see, the flint beetle's hard shell repels Pikmin that attack it. Now, there are also these butterfly-looking enemies that hide inside these flowers in this area, only in specific ones, though, only in specific flowers. And if you knock them out of the air, or they're called luminous spectralids, by the way, they'll give you some nectar drops. And so, if you remember what happens when Pikmin drink nectar from the first game, they get a flower, which is really awesome. And some cool camera angles that show off the beauty of this area. The Pikmin that drank the yellow nectar instantly matured into Flower Pikmin. It appears to have enhanced motor skills. What a wondrous nectar! How intriguing. Like plants, Pikmin mature from leaf to bud to flower. Captain Olimar, you must share the information you have with your subordinate, Louie. Yeah, the nectar is that wonderful thing that makes your Pikmin run faster, do everything faster. Of course, they're going to lose those petals if they get knocked over in battle. Or get shaken off an enemy, there's a chance that they'll lose the flowers and revert to leaf. In the first Pikmin game, they reverted to bud sometimes instead of reverting to leaf. However, they just skip right to leaf in this game. So bud Pikmin are actually the most rare kind of Pikmin that you can come across. Now, that black wooden wall takes a little bit more strength to bring down. Maybe not quite as much as it did in the first, but it still takes a good while. And that enemy that I knocked out right there was a honey wisp. In the first Pikmin game, they only dropped nectar, but in this game, they drop nectar. They drop eggs that may contain nectar or something else. So that's a little difference there. Now we have another new enemy, the Cloaking Burrow-Nit. This is one of my favorite enemies in the game. It's basically, it just shoots out its little tongue or whatever to try to eat a Pikmin. And it can only eat one at a time, so they're really not dangerous at all. You basically just throw Pikmin onto its little face or swarm it. Of course, if you're playing through this game normally, it's heavily advisable to just throw purples on top of them, because the purples will finish them off in no time at all. And as you've noticed, we're fighting a completely new enemy here as well, the Creeping Chrysanthemum. It can only eat, I think, 2 or 3 Pikmin maximum with each bite, but it does have a lot of HP, and it just throws Pikmin everywhere every time it shakes them off. Of course, it disguises itself as a flower, so you might not see it coming at first, but it's pretty obvious if you get in close with your camera, you can see it has little eyes. And over here we have another paper bag, the last one in the game, actually, but this one has a lot of compressed air underneath it, enough that we need 200 to weigh it down. And of course you're noticing these big berry plants here. Well, we're not going to be using them. That's one of the things that I've put up for this run, is we're not going to be harvesting berries, and therefore we're not going to get the special potions that they give us. But I'll explain it anyway. If you get 10 of those red berries, you just swarm Pikmin around the stalks, they'll climb up and knock the berries off, and carry them back to your ship. If you bring back 10, you get what's called an ultra spicy spray, and that basically just, every time you use it, it'll make your Pikmin much faster and much stronger for about 1 minute of time. And every time you get 10 berries, you get another dose of ultra spicy spray. So it's heavily advisable to use against difficult situations to finish things fast in this game. Or in certain boss battles where I'm going to tell you, this is a boss where you really want to bring along some of those sprays. But as I said, in this challenge run, we're not going to be using any. Instead, we're just going to be using Nectar as our biggest power-up, really. So in that sense, it's going to be a little bit more like the first Pikmin game, using the tools from that game in this one, where the combat's a little bit more challenging overall, if we were not to use purples, which we're not. And over here we have a new dungeon entrance, absolutely covered in those pink flower petals. Biological sensors are reacting violently. The readings are ominous. A beast of unknown power lurks in these depths. A large Pikmin group would be reassuring. Yes, its power level is over 9,000! My sound sensors are picking up hostile roars of many beasts. Expect dangerous encounters. Sensors are also showing extreme heat pockets. You may need flame-resistant Pikmin. But my records indicate no such data. Are my records incomplete? Well, this dungeon's the Hole of Beasts, and yes, there is fire within. And don't worry, the flame-resistant Pikmin you need just happen to be red Pikmin, so we're good. And we have a large Pikmin army, so we're going to be tackling this dungeon next episode. See you then.